I'm going to call our study session of Shelton City Council to order on January 8, 2019. First, want to say a couple things about tonight. One, this is a study session, and since this year we're allowing comment on business items before they go to action items. So this is just a study session to move things potentially on to another meeting on another agenda item. Could move on to another business discussion or an action item. We're going to allow 3 minutes like normal for general comment. I'm going to respectfully ask, we have lots of people who want to speak. The council has lots of things to go over, so if you can keep your comments brief, that would be great, but you all have 3 minute limit. And once we get into the study session, I know we have some experts from various fields here, from Ponza and other places. And if staff or council needs some information, request questions, we will ask you questions. And I'd really like to keep the answer to the question and not make general comments, because we're really trying to put in the general comments on a fair basis so everyone has the same opportunity. So is that fairly clear to everyone? Okay, with that, I'll open for comments.
First is Tom Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, for the record, my name is Tom Davis. I'm a veteran advocate here in Mason County, and I'm involved with the Tiny Homes Project. And I know you're very familiar with it by this point. I see we have a lot of folks here in the audience. I would love for everybody to become familiar with this project, become comfortable with this project. Part of this is that not only will this be for homeless veterans. I mean, it will be homeless veterans in all stages of recovery and in all stages of homelessness. So it's important to understand that we have some situations in Mason County regarding veterans who are homeless, who are in need of treatment. Part of that treatment comes with safe and sober housing. As a matter of fact, in our Veterans Court, that's a requirement that you have safe and sober housing, stable housing, living conditions, so that the veterans who do have problems with chemical dependency or PTSD or TBI have a solid basis from which those services can be provided. Otherwise, if you're out there in the woods or you're couch surfing, it's very difficult to treat people. And I think we kind of know that. So tonight, aside from all the other special conditions, I'd like, for my purposes, to focus on therapeutic treatment as it relates to the homeless, veteran homeless situation. And toward that end, I'd like to read something from the prosecutor who was going to be here. He tells me that his kids spoiled his plan to be here. I'm sure I wasn't supposed to say that. But here's the message that he's written for you. As the Chief Deputy Prosecutor, attorney for Mason County, I have had the wonderful opportunity to work directly with the therapeutic court programs for nearly a decade. Throughout that time, there have been many successes and numerous obstacles. One of the constant obstacles facing these programs is the lack of affordable, clean, and sober housing for our participants to reside. This type of housing plays a vital role in the recovery of the individuals in our programs and often helps reunite families that have been torn apart for years. Although I do not know all the details of the current project, I admire the work the city is putting forth to address this issue. I say these words as the Chief Deputy Prosecutor and not as a spokesman for Mason County or Mason County Therapeutic Court System as a whole. And then he invites anyone who would like to speak with him individually from the council to call him and have that conversation. What it kind of leaves out is that Mason County in general has written a letter of support for the project. So that's about all the time. I think that's my cue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.
That was Tim Whitehead, correct?
Tim Whitehead, thank you.
Next we have Rosemary Greenwell.
Okay, there are 5 schools with children kindergarten all the way through high school in close proximity of the proposed project. 2 convalescent homes, an assisted living establishment, and a senior citizen community with approximately 50 single women. Why in the world would anyone even consider putting living quarters for homeless veterans with mental problems, PTSD, substance abuse, problems in such close proximity to so many of Shelton's most vulnerable citizens? I think it's asking for disaster, especially with the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dorothy Lang.
I'm sure I won't take the 3 minutes, but we all respect the needs of the veterans. We all have veterans in our families, but we're wondering if there aren't enough homeless veterans in the Shelton area and you intend on bringing people from outside the community, they won't have a family resource. They won't have a backbone to help them other than within that little community. And what are those people going to do for the 24 hours a day that they're there? Like Rosemary has said, with our community, we feel very vulnerable up there. I have felt safe moving to that area, into Christmas Village, but I feel that if that village were put right outside our doorstep, so to speak, I would not feel that safe there anymore. And I would hope that there is another area within the Shelton area, if that's where you choose to put this, that there is a place maybe better fitted for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marilyn Vogler.
Thank you, Marilyn Vogler, 420 East Poplar. A couple of things to keep in mind with this. The homeless people in Shelton are no worse, no more violent, no more drug addicted than homeless people in Quixote Village were, that the homeless people in Pierce County being served by a similar project. The other thing to remember is that this project is a model. It has money and support from the state. Our legislators worked hard to get this. They have buy-in to the success. It's being managed by Panza. They are an experienced manager of a project like this. They've been through issues with Quixote Village from the very beginning. They know what to expect, and they know how they solve the problems they encounter. This has buy-in from groups in town that support our veterans. This project will not be allowed to fail. There is too much buy-in from too many people working really hard to make it successful so that it can be a model for other small villages, for homeless veterans, for homeless women, for homeless men in other areas of the country. It needs your buy-in to make it happen. But it's the sort of thing that requires a collaborative effort. It needs the state, it needs the nonprofit, it needs the city government. With partnerships like that, it will succeed. People will work really hard to make it succeed. And through all the concerns, the fears, the worries, the veterans in that project, I would venture, will be watched more carefully and helped with more strength and more security to help them and to assure that they don't create a problem for the community. So I hope you will support it to the ends of the earth with whatever is asked of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Bill Stevens.
My name is Bill Stevens, and I wore this hat purposely tonight. I'm a Korean veteran, and I know what these people go through. And I agree with everything that's been said here tonight about the veterans. plus they need more help than what's been said. And I think we all agree with that. What we disagree with is where you're putting them. Now, like the lady said, they're gonna have a lot of support and everything, but they're also gonna have visitors. And some of their friends and visitors are gonna be wandering around the neighborhood and whatnot. And we just have too many schools. I've watched kids from the school walk right by that way because they live in apartments behind the Christmas Village there. So they're going back and forth through there all the time. Then you have the YMCA club that you're going to put in there. That's bringing in more kids. Now, I support everything they're doing, but I do think you're making a mistake putting it where you're locating it. Now, I'm sure Shelton isn't so big that they can't find another area that's not quite so close. The senior citizens that live at that Christmas Village, there's over 100, there's 104 buildings there, and many of them have 2 people in them. So you're looking at 150, 200 seniors. I'm 85 years old, and I'm not the oldest person in there.
No.
We've got one lady in there that's 100 years old, lives alone. If something happens, she has nothing. You know, you go, people go in and you hear it all the time where they talk these old folks out of their life savings, giving them sob stories and whatnot about this and that and everything. And they fall for it. They lose all their money. So I really think that we should put this someplace where not so many people are vulnerable to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Good.
David Hepburn.
I also wear my hat. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm a disabled veteran. There is nowhere near enough items of any way, shape, or form being done to support our vets. They interact with each other because it's a bond. If you're not a vet, you don't understand what it is to be taken away from your home and made to do things, made to be where you don't necessarily want to be. But every single one of them supported this country. Every single one of them sacrificed away from their families to support your families. There isn't enough that this council, anybody else, I empathize with the seniors and the schools and everything else like that. But I can't say it enough. You can't do enough to support these people. I take it upon myself to drive vets to doctor's appointments, anything that I can do, because that's something that needs to be done, and it's not being done enough by the city, the county, the state, or the Veterans Administration. I can do that. I support our vets. Please support them also. They sacrificed for you. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Mike Olson.
I live 100 feet from the current homeless shelter the Community Lifeline runs. I've lived there for 12 years. My neighborhood is full of elderly, single, widowed people. And in 12 years, and I'm sure the chief, if you wanted to look this up, we had no incidences of robberies, assaults, anything in our neighborhood. It is one of the safest neighborhoods in town, I think. And you might say, well, they're only there at nighttime. Well, they're not. They're now living in their cars outside. They're there constantly, summer, winter, fall, spring. And they're my neighbors. I don't have any issues with them. They're friendly, they'll help. I'm talking about them like they're a separate group of people. Well, they're not, they're us. And like I say, I've lived there for 12 years, the closest house in town other than one other person. And we have no issues with the shelter, and it's run probably not as stringent as this will be run. They're only made to follow rules when they're in there at night. Once they're out in the morning, they're left in our neighborhood. They're harmless. Once again, I'm talking like they're not humans almost, but I don't like this fear that's going on that they're going to accost our children and rip us off. They're not. They're regular folks. And I hope that the council will take that into consideration, that they're safe. There's probably no more crime created by that group of people than there are any other group of people, including the high school students. I just think that the fears are not warranted, and this place will be run very strictly. And I think if we don't do it now, it's only going to get worse downtown. That's where everybody sees the homeless, and they have no place to go, so they just stick around the community lifeline. And they get in a little bit of trouble, but as far as the fear of them taking advantage of elderly people, I think is unwarranted. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Andy Conklin.
Hi there. My name is Andy Conklin. I'm a fifth-generation lifetime resident of Mason County. I've been in the real estate business in town for over 26 years. I have a number of concerns, along with everybody else, about the proposed tiny homes village. But a few months ago, the city hired an economic development firm consultant to help develop a plan to bring the city forward. And I was fortunate to have sat on that committee and helped develop this plan. Nowhere in this plan does it say that the city needs to be a partner in developing housing for homeless people in general. At the end of one of our sessions, I had asked one of the consultants if they'd been made aware of this proposed project, and they had not. Nobody had talked to them about this potentially happening when we're developing an overall economic plan for the city. But in the course of that discussion, they brought forward a really valid point, and it has to do with the value that was placed on the city's assets that were a part of a recent appraisal that was done. And these valuations were made prior to any knowledge of investments that were going to be made from the school districts, the hospital, and the YMCA that are all being done within a quarter mile of this proposed site. The consultants offered that because of the $33 million that's being invested at the high school and Oakland Bay Junior High, $27 million being invested at Mountain View, an additional $12 million in athletic improvements and other facilities improvements at the high school, $20 million or maybe even more from the hospital, and another $15 million that's being invested in the YMCA, that the value of this particular parcel is probably significantly higher than the $320,000 appraisal that you have. You need to take that into account when you're making your decisions about funds that are being asked to be donated. This also will affect the rest of the city's assets that are in the immediate area. And they've all significantly increased based on these other investments. I think that as a council, one of your foremost jobs is to protect the assets of the city. And I'm not certain that placing a homeless project in the middle of all of this huge investment and commitment from the residents of the area is doing that. This parcel and the others that the city owns are arguably in the most valuable part of the entire city. And I'm afraid that this project would greatly decrease the value of the rest of that asset that you currently own. If there is there another location that we can put this project?
That's right.
That won't have as big an impact? Is it crucial that it be within the city limits? Is it crucial that you guys be partners with this proposed site? If this were not being sold to you as a home for homeless veterans, would you still be considering this? I'm afraid that based on an entirely different set of numbers, that this will not just be for homeless veterans, and as you're being led to believe. So, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Vincent Dulcich.
Good evening, Council. My name is Vince Dulcich. I'm an Operation Iraqi Freedom veteran, also a case manager over at Northwest Resource Inpatient Drug Rehabilitation Center. I see this project as being, it would be a great benefit. I also was a homeless veteran 2 years ago, addicted to drugs, had symptoms from post-traumatic stress disorder that I wasn't even aware of. That actually got me the help through the therapeutic court, veterans court that I went through, sending me up to the VA and getting me the help and the service connections that I earned. There's a bond between two veterans when they get together. Doesn't matter what war, what age, what race. You know, we all bled green at one point. We look out for each other. We hold each other accountable. You know, it's really, it's really one of those things that you don't ever let go of in your life. You know, I think about the desert every single day of my life. If I could go back, I would. I went there so a lot of you didn't have to. Putting this in that location, again, I'm not sure which side I'm on when it comes to that. I've just kind of walked into this sharing that, you know, I was a homeless veteran that now is employed and part of this community. Again, I'm in full support of this. I feel that it would be great to give the veterans an opportunity to get the help that they need. Maybe they provided transportation to the VA to get to where they need to go and to get off the streets, you know. That's really all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
J.C. Osterberg.
Hi, everyone. My name is J.C. Osterberg, and I am the Executive Director at Coyote Communities, aka PANZA, the nonprofit organization that is trying to build the village here in Shelton. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. It sounds like there's a lot of veterans in this room, and so thank you all for your service. I really appreciate it. I've come and talked here a few times before in front of the City Council, so I don't want to sound like a broken record. But I just want to say that I deeply support this project. I've worked at Coyote Village in Olympia for 3.5 years. I love what I do. I feel that everyone deserves housing. I'm hearing a lot of fear-based things going on, and I totally understand the concerns that people have. But I will tell you, you know, straight up, I sent the chief the 911 calls. That's in the minutes as well. There's not a lot of this violence and drug use that's going on that a lot of people think that is happening. We're in an interesting location where we're at in Olympia. We're in an industrial area, but right around the corner we have neighborhoods that are like Christmas Village or any other neighborhood that you would see in any other city, and there has not been one single call of a burglary or violence or anyone trying to take advantage of a senior or elderly person. We're not trying to hide anything. We're upfront, and I will love to stay after and answer anyone's questions that they may have. We have a tour even at the Olympia Community Village. It's the third Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. Please, I have cards if you'd like to contact me. I'd love to talk with people who have questions and concerns. And I'll also be at Christmas Village tomorrow at 10 a.m. As well as my counterpart Amanda. We will be there, and we're giving a presentation and they're kind of a Q&A for anyone, any of the residents that have questions. So please, I'd love to talk to anyone that has anything that they'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, J.C.
Ginger Siegel.
My name is Ginger Siegel. I work for Community Frameworks. We are a statewide nonprofit housing developer, so we are working with Coyote Communities to develop the village here in Shelton, and we are also working with Coyote Communities to develop a similar village in Ording in Pierce County. And I just wanted to share that I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing it for about 25 years. I've worked in dozens of communities throughout Washington State. And it is very common for people to have concerns and fears. It's can be very challenging to invite new people into your communities. But unfortunately, a lot of people can't afford housing, and a lot of people don't have a lot of choices. And it is especially, I think, heart-wrenching that there are so many veterans, a disproportionate number of veterans that don't have any housing options. And these are people that have given quite a bit for the rest of us. And it's a shame that we have not developed the system so that they all have comfortable and safe housing options that the rest of us do have. Although it's very common for people to have concerns and fears about these types of projects, those fears consistently are not realized in these types of projects, both throughout Washington State and other places. There's a lot of data and a lot of studies that have shown that fears of increased crime, reduced property values, those kinds of issues that, of course, we all want to feel safe and we don't want to put anybody in jeopardy. But consistently, these projects have shown that if they are well managed, they're assets to the community. They're assets both for the residents and assets for the broader community. And I just want to encourage you to have an open mind and to be willing to hear and see examples of these types of projects that have helped so many people, and how your community could be a community that also welcomes these folks. And I encourage you to visit Coyote Village. There are other similar projects that we could arrange tours for folks, opportunities to talk to people that may benefit from this type of housing, so you could meet some of the people that really need this type of housing. I just really encourage you to have an open mind and be willing to hear and learn how this has worked in other places and how successful it's been.
Thank you, Ginger.
Stephen Tall.
Council members, Mayor. My name is Stephen Tall. I also work for Community Frameworks. As Ginger said, we're an affordable housing developer. So I've been the developer for the Ording project. So I can just explain a little bit about how we've worked with the community there. So we actually had to go through several city council meetings to get a code change passed that we need for our operating funding. So we were engaging with the community in that capacity. And then we've also had monthly community meetings, open community meetings at the Soldiers' Home where this village is going to be located. So that would be open to any community members. They were asking questions. So we've always had representatives there. So we've kind of, and we've been doing that for almost a year now. So I would assume that we could do something like that here as well. So, just to know that there's time for your concerns to be answered. So what we do is we secure the funding, and we've been working with the city leadership in Ording to make sure that they're aware, and educated about this model. And as I said, they passed a code change that was necessary. We've been working through land use approvals, architectural design review, to make sure that the village is compatible with their design standards and the Soldiers' Home. So we're really working hard to make sure that it's compatible with the community. I also wanted to just share a bit of my experience meeting residents at Coyote Village. So when I think one of the times I came there, before they knew me, I walked in and they said, who are you? So they're looking out for each other. So this was a resident, so they really care and they self-monitor. So they're aware of who's coming and going and if there's any strangers. And also I met many of the veterans that are at the Tacoma Rescue Mission in the veteran sleeping room. And they likewise, they really take care of each other and they want each other to succeed. So I think this can be, it's an opportunity for them to come together and really support each other in recovery. So it's really a wonderful opportunity, for them to get stable housing and to really help each other grow. So I hope that the City Council supports this project and can work through the technical details in the lease. And I hope the community members, like Ginger said, can stay open-minded and direct any questions you have to JC, also about eligibility requirements. So you can talk with her tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen.
Amanda Eichelberger.
Hi there, folks. Thanks for having us. My name is Amanda Eichelberger. I am currently the program manager at Coyote Village. And I'm also a citizen of Shelton. I just bought a house here last week, so I'm really excited about that. I want to talk a little bit about what I do at the village and how it kind of works, because I understand where these fears come from. I think they're super valid, and I think it's completely understandable why folks would be uncomfortable with this project, but I have answers to all of those things and why they would work. And as a citizen of Shelton, I would love to have coffee with any of you and talk to you about that, and I'll be here after the meeting too. Our program is really different than most because it's clean and sober living and because we are under this peer mentorship model. So a lot of my colleagues have expressed the way that that peer mentorship piece works. And we don't actually have folks who are violent or sex offenders or people who have a history of causing harm in their community. That's not really what we want to support. And so what we see, or what I have seen, is people want a chance for sobriety. I've worked in emergency shelters, I've worked in a lot of different settings, and they can be really difficult if you're trying to be sober when you're in an emergency shelter or you're living outside. So what we attract are the people who want to be clean and sober, and so they meet that bar, and they sort of mentor each other through that, and people who aren't ready for that, they tend to kind of fall through the wayside because they aren't able to meet our community standards, and so they don't tend to be at the Village very long if they get in the first place. So what we see is this very tight-knit community of people who are very, very committed to their own recovery and who are supporting each other in that. And we also, I heard some concerns about folks walking around, and I can totally understand that too. We also have a really strict visitor policy. We don't have folks, it's not just a free-for-all where you can have people staying at your place whenever you want. We're vetting every visitor in the same way that we vet our residents. Well, maybe not the same. We do a background check. We don't do a UA on visitors, but we do have a 3-night limit. We do have staff monitoring of those visits. We know what's kind of happening, and at our current Village, most of our visitors are kids and grandkids. It's mostly families. It's not what you think it is. Like I said, the vast majority of our visitors are minors coming to visit family members. We believe that the long-term safety that our Village gives the people who live there creates the long-term stability that prevents the kind of incidents that folks are afraid of. And I also personally feel that it's better to have folks supervised. The evidence shows that as well, that in our communities it's much better to have folks in an area where they have support and structure rather than just sort of out wandering around with nothing to do. Our folks volunteer in the community, they're very active members of the community, they're advocates for other people, and they do a lot of real good because they are now able to do that because they have a safe place to be. And so we are able to encourage that, and they become very, very integrated parts of the community. That's my time, so thanks y'all. I'll be here afterwards and I would love to talk to you more about it.
Mike Warjon.
All right. So I'm Mike Warjon. I'm a board member at Coyote Communities and Fonzo, the two names are interchangeable. And since I only have 3 minutes on the Tom Davis clock, I am going to, I have an economic argument and I have a safety argument, but there's some safety concerns in the room, so I'm going to address that first. Very simply, the number of people in the Village that are using drugs or drinking is 0. You have to be sober to live there. Number 2, the number of sex offenders that live in the Village is 0. You cannot be a sex offender to be a resident in the Village. You cannot have a felony record. You have to be vetted. You have to pass a very high bar in the homeless community to qualify. And that is part of the secret sauce that makes this work. The other thing is, and the City Council's tired of hearing me say this, but I'll address this crowd, the safety. The number one thing when you ask someone that lives in that Village, what is the thing you like about living here? They'll say, for the first time in my life, I finally feel safe. I have a fence around me, no one can get to me. I have a house to live in, no one can get to my stuff. And when we asked the residents of Coyote Village if you were going to build this thing again, would you do anything different? They said, yeah, we want 2 doors that lock in the front so people can't get in. So, because right now there's 1 door that gets into JC and Amanda's office, and because this thing has been such a success, there's a lot of people that want to come see it. And so they've got senators and other police chiefs from other communities coming and visiting all the time and walking around, and they don't know who these people are, and they said, we want a second door. So if visitors come, they have to check in at the office before they can come in and a key code so that we don't have people bothering us in our community. I am personally good friends with several people living in Coyote Village. Some of the people there I went to high school with, I grew up in Olympia. And I can tell you right now that the safety is the thing that they really like about being there. That enables them to then get on with the other things they need to deal with in their life. I suspect that when this Village is done, your community is going to be very good friends with that community. You are actually going to enjoy having a group of veterans that are up and going and getting on with their lives and wanting to do positive things. I would want that across the street from my house. These are people you are going to want to meet and know. So I'll leave you 30 seconds. Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Tim Sheldon.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity. I was born here in Shelton. It's a great community. I think we all know that. And I worked very hard to find the appropriation for this because I think it fits us. It's something that we can do. And to help our veterans, you've heard a lot of articulate people tonight talk about their experience, their visits to Quixote Village. I expect it will be run first class. I think the crime issue, Chief Moody knows and spoken to the chief over in Thurston County. It's going to be a very safe place. It is a great location. Out of town is not on the bus line. Out of town is not near employment. Out of town is not near grocery stores. Out of town is not near the community college, where many of these people will use the community college facilities. I think it's time to say yes to this, to move forward. $3 million is there waiting to be used. And many communities, I think, see this as a possibility perhaps for their community. But we've got the opportunity to do it now. One thing I jumping around a little bit, but one thing I noticed when I was at Quixote Village that impressed me, that if you're living on the street, you can't see your children. How is that going to work? How are you going to have a visitation with your kids without a home? And it impressed me that now families can be reunited, pulled together. There's great benefits. I guess I would close just with two things. I don't want to just, Mike mentioned that everybody there will be clean and sober. I think that's very, very important. They will be, their background will be checked. I don't know what community you could check into in Mason County and make sure that all your neighbors are clean and sober and not wanted. So I think there's great advantages. The last thing I'd mention though is look at the weather tonight. What is it going to be like? How would you like to be outside tonight? How would you like to be outside tonight? You can't get warm. You can't get dry. The possibilities, you don't have others around you that are supportive. I think this is just a wonderful opportunity, and I hope we can do it. With your help, we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
That's it, Mayor.
That's it. All right.
Mayor, if I could request the opportunity to make a comment. Is that all right? My fellow council members allow that? Have a short
Sure.
comment? So, you guess? Thank you, Jack.
And you don't have a 3-minute time?
You feel free. I'll be brief. The last few months working on this project, lots of questions have come up, lots of concerns have been voiced. And personally, I actually took a bunch of time, and as a millennial, yes, I used a paper and pen and wrote down my thoughts tonight. So bear with me here. This is from my heart, and I'm just gonna let it roll. So I'm a veteran. My wife is a veteran. She will be retiring as a veteran from the Air Force. She's a corpsman and also full-time job, works at Mason General Hospital in the emergency department. Prior to becoming a city council member, I was a volunteer firefighter. I understand the challenges that exist in Shelton. I rode with the Shelton Police Department prior to becoming a city council member. I understand. I've taken the time to understand the challenges that exist with homelessness, substance abuse, mental health disorder, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not against tiny houses. I'm not against housing people who need homes. I'm not against Ponza or any organization who's willing and wanting to help that move forward. That being said, I do have concerns. I've thought a lot about this. Senator Sheldon speaks $3 million. There's $3 million on the table for the city of Shelton to work on the housing crisis that currently exists. We looked at the grant funding that we've received in the past few years and what the type of funding and how far that can go in a small city like this. For $3 million, I believe, as a veteran, we should see more than just honorably discharged, clean and sober veterans be able to receive housing. I believe we can do something a little bit better than that. I'm not sure what that is, but I'd like to talk more about it, and I'd like to work together to get to that solution. The brunt of the homelessness issue in Shelton isn't just homeless vets needing a hand up. It's non-veterans with mental health issues, non-veterans with substance abuse issues, and it's those just experiencing hard times in their lives. And I want to make sure that those folks as well have an opportunity to be housed and have visitation with their children and not be outside during a Western Washington winter. That being said, I feel that somebody has already decided this project for the city. I feel that the solution has already been chosen for us, which kind of leads me to my second concern. We're pushing a solution that worked for a specific problem in Olympia. Ponza developed their model based off of the Quixote Village, the tent city, and what Quixote villagers wanted, right? Tiny homes. There's no guarantee that the Olympia solution is the right solution for Shelton, but we cannot determine the appropriate solution for Shelton until we consult with the already existing providers in the city, Community Lifeline, Mason General Hospital, etc. What have we done as a council, as a city, to collaborate and coordinate with the already existing resources in our city limits to pull off what should be a fantastic project? So my ask to the council is just that we work to determine the true needs of the city and the true needs of our community, work with the agencies and the organizations to bring forward workable solutions or move towards action and advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anybody else would like to say something before we move through the agenda? Okay.